Was not a happy year for the royal family in Buckingham Palace. First in April came the divorce of the Duchess of York, Sarah Ferguson, and Prince Andrew. And then in late August came the official end to what was once a fairy tale romance.
15 years ago, the whole world watched as Prince Charles married Diana in a ceremony befitting their royal status. They would go on to have two sons, their firstborn, Prince William, the heir to the British throne. However, cracks soon began to form in their marriage. Rumors began to swirl about Charles and the woman many in Britain considered to be his mistress, Camilla Parker Bowles. Charles and Diana finally separated, with Diana confessing to her own infidelities. Their divorce became official on August 28th. As part of the settlement, Diana reportedly walks away with more than $22 million. And now the speculation centers on whether the 47-year-old Charles will marry again, or if he should ever be crowned the King of England. But while Britain mulled over the breakup of the royal couple, the man once called America's most eligible bachelor tied the knot. John F. Kennedy Jr. married Carolyn Bessette on September 21st. The private ceremony took place on a secluded island off the coast of Georgia. Babies did make big news in 1996. While filming the movie Evita, pop star Madonna found out her much publicized effort to have a child was successful. The father is boyfriend Carlos Leon. Madonna delivered a baby girl named Lourdes. Pretty soon you won't be saying Michael Jackson is bad. You'll be saying he's a dad. That was just the latest shocker in what's turned out to be a stunning year for the king of pop. First, he and Lisa Marie Presley filed for divorce. Then in November came word that Michael is going to be a father. The mother is a woman Jackson reportedly met 15 years ago. But that's not all. Shortly after the pregnancy announcement came word of a secret Jackson wedding in Australia. The baby is due in early 1997.
When we come back, a look at some of the developments in 1996 that could change your life.
It should be up to the parents to decide what the kids should watch and not watch.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of
1 year ago, the eyes of the nation were glued to a Los Angeles courtroom for the verdict in the O.J. Simpson murder trial. In 1996, Simpson found himself back in another courtroom.
A wrongful death suit was filed against Simpson by the families of murder victims Nicole Brown, Simpson, and Ronald Goldman. But there was one big difference in this trial.
For the first time, the former football star would be forced to answer questions about the murders in front of a jury. Simpson repeatedly denied any knowledge of the crimes, or that he ever hit his ex-wife, despite those highly publicized photos showing a bruised and battered Nicole. The first day Simpson testified, spectators began lining up to get into the courtroom at 4 a.m. The Los Angeles County Courthouse was packed with reporters for the end of another highly publicized murder case. Eric and Lyle Menendez were convicted of murdering their parents while they watched television in their Beverly Hills home back in 1989. The brothers claimed they had been sexually abused for years and were acting in self-defense. They were spared the death penalty, but both will serve life sentences. Their first trial ended in a hung jury. A remote area in eastern Montana became the unlikely scene for a standoff between federal agents and a group known as the Freemen. The siege began in March when agents tried to arrest several members of the anti-government group on charges of helping federal fugitives avoid arrest. Women and children eventually left, but 16 heavily armed members stayed behind. The standoff finally ended nearly 3 months later when a Montana lawmaker promised to protect papers the Freemen claim will help them in their criminal case. As 1996 comes to a close, the military faces its biggest sex scandal since the Navy's Tailhook Convention. Charges of rape, assault, and sexual harassment were filed against 3 instructors at the Army's Aberdeen, Maryland proving ground. Investigators are looking into more than 500 complaints by female recruits who say they were often forced to have sex with their superiors. So far, at least 3 face charges, and the reports triggered nearly 4,000 complaints at other military bases around the country. Texaco paid out a record $176 million in 1996 to settle a race discrimination lawsuit. The settlement came after an explosive audio tape was released showing how Texaco officials were planning to destroy documents in the case and making derogatory remarks about African-American employees.
I alleged that they called me a little colored girl. To hear it actually spoken, black jelly beans, niggers, those types of things, those aren't allegations. He validated us. He validated this suit.
The settlement includes cash payments to about 1,400 present and former black employees and a panel to supervise Texaco's hiring practices. America lost one of its highest-ranking religious leaders with the passing of Joseph Cardinal Bernardin. As Roman Catholic Archbishop of Chicago, he helped shape the Catholic Church and was once considered a possibility to become the first American pope. Cardinal Bernardin suffered through a very public battle with pancreatic cancer. He won universal praise for the way he handled his impending death.
He set a great example for many people in terms of brotherhood and how he faced adversity.
He went in peace and he was ready to go, and I think it gave us all a feeling that death is not to be feared.
I see death as a friend, as the transition from earthly life to life eternal.
He was 68. An outbreak of bacterial contamination forced the recall of a popular fruit drink and raised serious questions about the safety of some foods. More than a dozen people in Washington state came down with E. coli bacteria poisoning. Most of those cases were linked to Odwalla products containing apple juice. The company immediately ordered a recall of its product in 7 states and Canada. The outbreak was eventually traced to a batch of unpasteurized apple juice. Health experts say apples are easily contaminated if they fall to the ground and come into contact with animal waste, which contains the E. coli bacteria.
We also saw a lot of changes in business during 1996. Ted Turner merged with Time Warner, and MCI joined forces with British Communications, forming one of the world's largest companies next to AT&T. But the biggest change of all might have come with the stroke of a pen.
On February 8th, President Clinton signed the most sweeping telecommunications reforms into law since the 1930s. The bill affects virtually every form of communication: telephones, cable and broadcast television, even the internet. For consumers, the good news is that the law opens up markets for competition, meaning we'll have more choices. The bad news is a prediction of higher rates in some cases, and fears of various companies joining forces and monopolizing the information and entertainment fields. Too much sex and violence on television was the topic of a White House summit this past summer. The president called on top TV executives to deal with an epidemic of programming many feel is unsuitable for children. They came up with 2 solutions. One, expected to be announced soon, is a rating system similar to movies for all TV programs. The other is a V-chip in television sets that will allow parents to block their children from watching certain shows. But that probably won't happen before 1998. '96 was a banner year for the man considered to be one of America's most powerful business leaders. Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, became a father for the first time. His net worth reached the $20 billion mark, and he wrote a best-selling book. But perhaps most important, his company fought off one of its biggest challengers. The enemy was Netscape, and the battlefield was the internet. At stake was who would come up with the best software to allow people to browse through cyberspace. The battle, however, is far from over. Netscape is considering antitrust action. We all became very familiar with a new word in the early days of 1996, downsizing, as many companies began laying off workers. One of the biggest layoffs ever was announced by AT&T, 40,000 people, roughly 13% of its workforce.
Corporate America has lost the focus on family values. And it's just a travesty that people lose their jobs and they have bills and mortgages and children to raise.
And there could be more on the horizon as the competition stiffens for long-distance and local phone service. The economy reached an historical milestone in October when the Dow Jones closed above the 6,000 level for the first time ever.
It's fun to watch it go up. I know nothing about the market, so it's wonderful to watch my money grow.
The biggest contract of all, however, goes to singer Janet Jackson. Virgin Records signed her to the richest deal ever, worth $80 million. The contract calls for an unspecified number of albums.
When Images of 1996 returns, we'll say hello to some new legends on the playing field.